And we're back. So ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for joining us. We're about to go underway. Nathanius, your thoughts before we get into this game?
I think it's going to be a pretty interesting match to see, although I feel like one of these guys, a bit more known for ZVZ, and that's, well, I think you should be the one to at least introduce who our players are going to be for this game.
I might get that honor. Okay. Yeah, I'm guessing you're talking about Jaedong? Is that what you...
Perhaps.
Yeah, okay. ZVZ's quite good. But we are underway. The map, Belshire Vestige, and our players. In the top left-hand corner, hailing from France, it is Evil Genius's Stephano. And a man who, before he got into StarCraft 2, cited Stephano as one of his inspirations and favorite players, his teammate, friend, and now foe, it is Evil Genius's Jaedong. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, do us the favor, excuse me, and please, when discussing these games, hashtag DHOpen. Let's spread the word, let's get it trending, and let's share the goodness that is StarCraft with the rest of the world.
Indeed, sir. It's come a long way to get to the top 16 position. And
Yes.
as you mentioned earlier, these guys want to get into the top 8, want to get into that money. There's already some WCS points available to the top 16 finishers, but you really don't get into the real meat of prizes until you get into that top 8 position.
You're absolutely right, and it's a very advantageous place to be because, I mean, at DreamHack Open Stockholm, we talked a lot about how the points you earned there really solidified you on that leaderboard, but for right now, okay, Adibis, you're such a good observer. Look at this guy. He's like, Caster, stop talking about other things. This is a fairly early pool. Well, actually, no. No, why'd you do that?
It's all good.
Why did you twerk it, Adibisi? I actually thought this was going to be a 10 pool, so I broke my thought, but maybe you just messed up a little
It's
bit.
like observing mind games, really.
Yeah, he's trying to keep us in line here. I understand. That's fine. But just to finish out the thought process here, the WCS points are, of course, a very, very big deal. While at the shorthand, they don't do much for you in that particular season, but at the end of the road, at the end of the rainbow, is a gigantic BlizzCon tournament with lots and lots of money at hand, but a lot of fame, that's where it's going to be had. So you want to earn those points throughout the year, and one of the best places to do that would be at a DreamHack, which this one is Tier 1, so that means there's a lot of points available. 750 to the winner, in fact, so you want to get those points.
Yeah, there's quite a bit at stake. I think a good number of the players on the lower end actually of that top 16 currently are only at about 1,500. So this can really solidify some of these guys a very nice position. And as far as the number of tournaments that are remaining, you've got WCS, Europe events, of course. The next Premier season going to be starting up in a couple of weeks, but this is the offline events are where you can get yourself that edge without having to play through all of the the weekly content and continuing to push through much larger brackets. So it's one of the other exciting aspects of these offline tournaments.
Very good point, my friend. Now, as far as this game goes, this is going to be a best of 3. It's best of 3 all the way up to the finals, where we'll have a best of 5. And you'll notice they're both playing their cards pretty close to their chest in the sense that it was pool first, then hatchery. Hatchery first is the more advantageous opening. But we found that not by too terribly much. I mean, if you pull the Zergs, there's no Zerg out there that's like, you know what, I actually prefer pool first. I think it's better. No, nobody says that. You'd rather have the hatch so that you can have just that little bit earlier access to quite a few more larvae, but also the extra mining, of course. But if you are going to play it safer, you do go pool first, and we see both these players doing that. You had cited that one of these two guys is really well known for their ZVZ, and we do have a couple of scouting links from Stephano trying to make their way in here, and they will actually get in there. Seeing that the gas is still being mined and probably a quivering spawning pool, so it's kind of nice intel there. Jaedong has actually won a lot of his games off the back of a very successful ZVZ career, whereas Stephano's been on record pretty openly about saying he does not like the matchup.
Yeah, it's a very good point, especially considering it's also a team match, so these guys are a little bit more familiar with each other than you might expect from any two other Zergs, but we actually have a lot of Zerglings being produced very early on here by Jaedong. He's already moving out towards Stephano's base. Stephano, his Baneling Nest just about to finish, but he doesn't have any out just yet. The Queens are going to try to wall off this ramp here, but the Zerglings getting a pretty decent position. He can't transfuse. And Jaedong, he's just trying to do as much early damage as he can. There's a lot of Zerglings being produced behind this as well.
And Jaedong does find that Queen slides in a position to be a little bit more difficult to deal with on that ramp, but now exposing himself a little bit. The Spinecrawler does finish, though, so it looks like a pretty darn good defense from Stephano. Behind this, drones are coming out, so you'll notice a slight supply advantage for Stephano, but this is kind of the ebb and flow of ZVZ. Like, one guy makes lings, the other guy made drones, and as long as the guy that made the drones in lieu of the lings has things like queens and spine crawlers in place, they can make up the difference. And usually what happens behind those lings, equal part drones. So we find ourselves with damn near mirror image in terms of drones, and supply is different by 1. I mean, a very similar opening here.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a seesaw. You make
Exactly.
Zerglings, send them over. They make Zerglings, send them back, and you just kind of go back and forth until you get a really big Baneling hit. And we do have a big Zergling engagement here outside the natural of
trying to
Jaedong.
buy time.
But now the
Speedlings are gonna make
Banelings
their
are
way in
coming
here.
out. This is where he can start to get a bit of an edge here. If he can get these Banelings on these Zerglings, he's preventing the retreat in that mineral line. 1 detonation, nothing huge. It's still fairly in between these guys. And
Great multitasking from Stephano, splitting off a single Zergling and triggering the detonation from a single Baneling from Jaedong. Again, very similar in terms of exchange, but Jaedong finds himself trailing as many as 8 drones now. Not just because of drones lost, but also because behind this, yet again, as we talked about, Stephano is droning. And now that differential is up to 11 and climbing. So both players have not started their layers. Lots of gas going down for Stephano, however, right now. And the game kind of stabilizes just a little bit. Oh, never mind. Chaos.
Jaedong's going to run some Zerglings into the main base, try to focus down at least the Queen here for Stephano. He will be able to pick that off. And more of Stephano's Zerglings are going to defend this. The Baneling's not able to catch those Zerglings running into the ramp himself, and he's just going to continue to split around here, forcing the a little bit of diversionary tactics, but he's getting drones behind this.
Exactly.
We saw Stephano had that drone lead. It's becoming closer and closer, and he's also starting his lair.
It's like a tennis match, because guess what Stephano's going to do with all these lings he made to respond to those lings? He's going to send them across the map in just a moment, and Jaedong's going to have to respond. So Jaedong has pulled up within 3 drones, but perhaps that will switcheroo once again. As we can see in that production tab, that Stephano is actually adding more drones here, making his own lair quite a bit later. So he's going to want to get some answers in with these Zerglings. No player has extended themselves to a 3rd base just yet. Baneling's at the top of the ramp. They're looking for a big detonation. No, not going to get it.
And nothing really. He's trying to focus on a couple of Zerglings to bring onto those Banelings and kind of get the detonations.
Right.
But with the Spine Crawl here and the Queens, he can target fire down the Banelings of his opponent. Not too much available here. Now, at the same time, Stephano's going to go for that +1 range weapon, so it looks like he wants to go Roaches.
Ooh.
But Jaedong, he's going to start a Spire.
Premier caster on Uin to the fine sounds of your voice. I'm on Uin because there's a difference here. We do have Stephano opting for the range upgrade, which very much so suggests that he is going to leverage these roaches he's making in response to the Mutalisk that hopefully he will see earlier rather than later, I suppose. He should be adding things like Hydralisk, but it's kind of well known that in this day and age, while roaches are nice and they can apply pressure to a Zerg to skip it, it's going from Ling to Muta, the Mutas will give map control, even amidst the Hydralisk. Hydralisk, while they do have a speed upgrade, still not the fastest units. So it's going to be interesting to see the adjustments, and actually there it is, Overlord speed in an infestation pit. So that makes me feel a little bit curious. I mean, I guess it's going to be infestors, but off of 2 bases. That's rough.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting scenario because the Mutalisks are going to be out around the same time that this hatchery finishes. If Stephano can protect the 3rd base, without the 3rd base for Jaedong, how many Mutalisks can he really afford to make?
Right.
So we could see Stephano go for a lot of roaches and just try to have so many that the Mutalisks can't kill them off as much, go for a lot of force and prevent the 3rd base of his opponent. He's being very active on the map with his Zerglings, but we do have now the roach speed starting, well, the first couple Mutalisks are on the way.
You're absolutely right. And you'll look at that little mini-map, too, and you'll notice there's a lot of overlords out there. So right off the bat, the part of the map control aspect is going to be denying information. Jaedong does swing around, see that 3rd has been put down a little bit earlier than his. Not a big deal. It's not like some of these matchups where if one player has that much earlier of an expansion, it's a huge, huge deal. But as I say that, Stephano getting a good surround on this hatchery, that hatchery will be canceled. There's no way around it. And Jaedong is finding himself having a tough time getting a 3rd, even a Baneling detonation there, while saving his own 3rd. Stephano, for now, in a solid place.
And an important thing to consider, Jeff, is that since Jaedong is going for Mutalisks, the Spore Crawlers with that recent buff, it's going to be a lot easier for him to defend against any kind of tech harass in this space. Now, Jaedong does have some Zerglings by the 3rd here, but Stephano, he has the roaches out now. He's going to be able to pick these away. That Spore Crawler is starting. The Mutalisks are coming in. This Queen doesn't have too much health. He might be able to put on a reasonable amount of pressure here with the few Mutas that he does have.
Yeah, actually really nice focus fire, weakening the Queen, never going to kill it, but even with just this weakening, it allows for the Mutalisk to pull in and pop it off. That Spore Crawler about to finish, though, and it does 3-shot Mutalisk, so that's denied. But the bigger threat here is that across the map come a crawling of roaches and lings, and that means that Jaedong's going to have to shift his attention. He's going to go ahead and counterattack with those lings because that's what Jaedong does. He's got the multitasking for it, but the staunch defense of Stephano might make that an erroneous effort. Oh, never mind, that 3rd will go down. Meanwhile, the 3rd of Jaedong will also get denied. Both these players blooding each other's noses.
Yeah, and it's kind of a really, really interesting setup. He's going to take out the Spore Crawler as well. The Mutalisks have a little bit more leverage as far as denying bases when there's not creep there to bring the Spore Crawlers, to bring the Queens. Even the Infestors that are about to come out for Stephano aren't quite as mobile as these Mutalisks. Mainly getting a couple of solid hits off on these Zerglings. But it's coming down to this. Both players really don't want each other to get that third base almost more than anything else. We're not even really seeing him split the Zerglings, try to run by the Spine Crawlers, and go for economic harass.
And I have to agree with you. One of the developing problems for Stephano, while I feel like he played the early game very, very well, he's now trailing in supply, and part of that is because he's gone for the very... Oh gosh, there might be a spread. You're going to break away for a second. A nice split from Jaedong. He's going to try to avoid those fungals. Stephano showing excellent patience. He does transfuse that Spore Crawler because it's a little bit of slice of heaven. Jaedong's going to interact anyways, but I don't know if I agree with this. Fungal's going down. Spore Crawler does end up dying. The Queen does go down as well. And, well, I'm glad Jaedong disagreed with me because it turns out I'm a bit of an idiot. This is a routing. Jaedong is going to have that third, and more importantly, the Infestors are gone.
Yeah, that's, you consider it takes 50 seconds to build them quite a bit more than the Mutalisks. The Zerglings are still left behind to deny Stephano's rebuilding third base, and it was kind of cool to see them use the Overlord speed. He was able to supply creep to keep that Spore Crawler from starting to die, but not quite enough. There's a lot of Mutalisks here. The Infestors forced to retreat. Even these Zerglings are getting in here. Might actually be able to pick off one or two of them. And Jaedong, he's got his third base defended so far. Will actually lose an Infestor, just a handful of those Zerglings, so... our Korean Zerg player here is looking very solid so far in this match.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head right now. It was very close earlier on. Dare I say Stephano had some slight advantage. That's a nice fungal. It does get all the links. His Mules are going to want to split. Looks like Stephano's not going to risk it because he knows that his life is dependent on these Infestors. You cannot whiff on a fungal at this stage because that could mean certain doom. There's a Spore Crawler anchoring that base. Now look inside there. That's actually just a second Spore Crawler being made. Okay, so... Stephano is going to kind of calm things down a little bit for himself behind that wall. He's been trying to take a third all game long. Oh, nice dodge on that fungal right there. Jaedong.
This Mutalist parted straight in half as soon as that fungal came.
He missed his calling as a fighter pilot, I suppose. Quick side note, I guess unfortunately does still have the opportunity for that given Korea's loss. But a story for another day. Now, a lot of Lings moving into the third over here. They do get a good surround. If Stephano were to breathe life into himself...
He needs to keep the third base out.
Never mind. There's more roaches for the guy with mutas than the guy with, Roach Infestor himself.
It's becoming a bit of an interesting situation. Stephano's going to go try to get a cost-effective army since he can't get his third base up. Jaedong, he's already making that switch into roaches. In fact, we saw Stephano open roaches, but being able to secure that third base, so much more minerals that he can mine once that's saturated, he's just going to be able to overpower him in the number of roaches, even building them later. So this is a very nice position to be in for Jaedong. A little bit brave here with these roaches pushing into this position at the same time with those fungal growths being available too.
This is just a war of attrition. Those fungals were excellent, but there's simply not enough. A fantastic swing around from the roaches of Jaedong, and Jaedong is knocking on the door of Stephano, and with it, it's going to be game number one in his favor. Even if we can see Stephano, I don't know, that even if seems a little bit out of place. The third base is being attempted behind this mule, swinging around to go make that a fool's errand. The final roach of Stephano has fallen, and Jaedong looks to be on his way to game number one victory.
Yeah, he's looking pretty solid. His roaches are a bit softened up. He has the third base now, Jaedong. Yeah. And the other thing is, even though Stephano's trying to go for the Swarm Host composition, he's getting his +1 carapace as well. The Swarm Host transition is already coming in for Jaedong. The energy on the Infestors burned to the point where he really can't deal with the Mutalisks harass as well. He even picked off quite a few drones during that fight, and the Spore Crawler that he does have there is quite weak. But here come these Swarm Hosts. I still feel that with the Mutalisks having this map control, taking that third base is going to be such a pain for Stephano.
Yeah, on the one hand, I want to look at what Stephano's doing and be like, oh, you can't afford to do that. What are you doing? But at this point in time, I feel like any decision he makes seems to be one that we could be critical of. That's what happens when you fall way behind is you have to take some kind of risk. So right now, his risk is he's saying, all right, I'm going to get some Swarm Hosts out, and I will have Queens and I will have Infestors. So if your Mules can get clumped up for me and I can Mega Fungal them, fantastic. Maybe my Swarm Hosts will kill because you've decided to go pure Roach with no detection, ? That's the risk he's going to try and end up taking because he's so far behind that that's the kind of stuff you have to do. If you just play it tried and true, like straight up, when you're way behind, you're more likely to lose because you're basically saying, well, I'm way behind, and if my opponent makes a severe mistake, I guess we'll be equal or maybe I pull ahead, but you don't want to ever play to the idea that your opponent makes a mistake. That's not, you're not going to get lucky that often.
That's a very good point. One of the things he'll be able to do with these Swarm Hosts is his third base does get denied again. Prevent himself from investing into too many more roaches. Let the Swarm Host be cost-effective versus these roaches, and this will buy him the time to get that third base up that he needs. But like we said, Jaedong, he's got this third base. That drone can be moving out to take a fourth base, and that's so much additional economy as far as that income tab goes between these two players.
Yeah. I mean, earlier we had talked about how if one third finishes before the other, it's not that big of a deal. There's obviously a limit to that. When one third is fully saturated mining for going on 3, 4, 5 minutes, okay, it makes a difference. So Jaedong's going to be pulling ahead in terms of upgrades and really just composition. Like you said, he also is making Swarm Host. So when you have Swarm Host on both sides, then it becomes more of that economic numbers game. The advantage that Stephano does have is he does have infestors, and they do get better as time goes on, as they have more fungals and more energy to release those infested Terrans. I mean, look at those fungals right there. Those roaches are held in place, and Stephano's going to win that fight. And in the background, there's no exchange. So we're looking at these roaches dying. He's not freeing up 200 supply. He's not at that point yet, and he wasn't counterattacking. So that was just a straight-up win for Stephano because he was able to fungal them and hold them in place.
You make a good point about that. And another thing to consider, though, is that once it becomes less roach and more swarm host, fungling the locust, not quite cost-effective. The Mutila's still going to be able to try to pick off one great transfuse on that infestor. It will die anyway, but at least he'll be able to get a fungal growth off on a few of these mutas. But he doesn't quite have the energy to invest to actually kill all of these off. And Jaedong's actually doing quite a bit of damage here with these Mutalisks.
Jaedong showing off his alternate career in Asteroid, dodging those fungals remarkably. He does end up losing all the Mutalisks, and I mean, he did kill a couple infestors there, so it's not like a straight loss like those roaches were, but I don't know. Stephano kind of clambering his way back in. Sure, he's down 50 supply, and I know a lot of you are like, dude, that's a lot. It is a lot, but a couple of roach pickoffs there, a couple of Mutalisk packs dying there, and all of a sudden we're talking about a different game. I'm also paid to make this interesting, so I'm trying as hard as I can, okay?
Perfectly.
Give me a break.
Perfectly understandable. And one of the other interesting things is, throwing away those Mutalisks like that, picking up the infestors. I think the infestors are going to have a greater role in the later phases of this game.
You're right.
The Mutalisks, maybe it's not so much a part of his plan anymore. We do see the Hydralisk Den coming in. Could just be turning into that Roach Locust Hydralisk, and he's going to manage to get another one of these infestors with the Locust. And, we actually saw a couple games yesterday, a couple ZVZs, where there were upgrade advantages for Zerg players with just less Locust, and it wasn't enough. The number of Swarm Hosts is going to really dictate the pace of this game, and right now, the person with more money to build those is Jaedong.
Whenever I see Swarm Host versus Swarm Host, I always think of, like, Dota or League of Legends. I feel like these are creep lanes that they're just kind of like, they bring in their heroes that are roaches and fungal, and they like, oh, wow, he's pushing a tower, which is actually a base. It gets... I don't know, I've been watching a lot of Dota. I guess it's kind of invading my brain. Don't worry, I'm still StarCraft. But it looks like Jaedong can afford to be the aggressor here. He does have let's check on the units tab, actually. He actually has less Swarm Host. I was doing that caster thing where I lead into something because I'm just assuming that I'm right. I'm wrong. Stephano managed to have more Swarm Host. So if he can hold this back, he will not die. There.
That's
how you like that load of information, Nathaniel?
that's what the Swarm Hosts are for, buying that time, becoming slowly more cost effective. Jaedong's going to push in towards his third base, though. The fungal growths are going to hit a lot of these. The Locusts will be coming in to reinforce, and the Infestors, you cannot afford to constantly fungal growth the Locust of your opponent. But if he takes out the Roaches, like you said, that even number of Swarm Hosts, once the Roaches are removed from the equation, it becomes a straight even fight. But the third base will fall, and Jaedong, he's got his fourth done.
He's got his fourth. He's pushing his fifth. I mean, Stephano actually climbed in supply for a moment there. He was getting the quote-unquote better engagement, but Jaedong can afford to focus down the hatchery, and in doing so, he has cut down the production of Stephano critically. Not only the production, but look, he's long-distance mining because his natural's actually mined out. So Stephano, he has been backed into a corner. He's going to make a desperate counterattack here. I don't know if all of the Swarm Hosts of Jaedong move command with the drones that he has. Maybe this game equalizes, but other than that, Stephano's going to give it his best effort, but it's just that is his effort.
And he has the Overseers over these Swarm Hosts. The Hydralisk moving in from the right side. He's going to be able to corner these. He can throw them and unleash another wave of Locusts. He's able to at least pick off the fourth base, but Stephano's...
Get behind those minerals.
He's just running for his life right now.
And he's going to try as best he can, but that is a concave of Roach Hydra, and Jaedong has pushed Stephano up against the ropes and is going for the haymaker. Stephano gave a great fight, but there's the GG. Game number 1 goes to Evil Genius's Jaedong.
There he is. He's
hang on, wait for
water.
it. Oh, that wasn't water. That was clear Monster. Don't drink water. Good God.
What human drinks that?
Exactly. Jaedong's not a human. All right, so game number 1 does go to Jaedong, and you actually were the guy that led into this saying, you know what? Jaedong, kind of known for his EVZ, pretty good at it. What are your thoughts post that? Did it live up to your hype?
I think so. And Stephano didn't necessarily play poorly. As far as that game went, it was a couple of very small things. And I got to give Stephano credit for denying Jaedong's third base for quite a while. Stephano was the only, he got his third base up so much faster. But Jaedong's Mutalisk control, taking out those infestors, the spread that he had when he did go in to deny the third of Stephano was just too much. And being able to overpower the Spore Crawler was really the key moment there, because as soon as that fell, even though he fungled the Mutalisks on top of it, once you lose that third, it's so hard to get it back because the creep spread and all of that, just preventing the anti-air from being replaced.
You're right. That was such a bold moment. I looked at that and I was like, wait a second. There's a couple of queens there. There's infestors and there's a single Spore Crawler. What is sub 75 Mutalisk doing trying to engage that? And Jaedong made it look easy. Like I said, I called myself an idiot, and I actually think in that moment I pretty much was, because he was the clear victor there. So Jaedong with that vision. Now, ladies and gentlemen at home, if you've got some opinions on those games, if you want to help Nathanius and I out casting a ZVZ, make sure to tweet at us and hashtag DHOpen. Some of your tweets can actually get up on that screen, so keep it family-friendly-ish. Keep it Swedish family-friendly-ish. So for us American prudes, it's a little bit different, but for you European liberals, it's a lot better, a lot more fun and engaging. But we're going to get into game number 2. Now, this map is Akalon Waste for the ZVZ. I think you and I are in agreement that earlier on, Stephano showed that he is very good at the ZVZ matchup. But as the game went on, it looked like Jaedong was the more complete player. How do you think that plays out here in terms of this matchup?
Well, it's a do-or-die scenario here. We're in the round of 16. There's no more playing for seeding. You need to win this match to advance on. And as far as what Stephano saw in game number 1, playing the conservative defensive style didn't work. Jaedong picked him apart with the Mutalisks. He picked him apart with that harass. And we could see either some earlier aggression out of Stephano, which could maybe lead to a bit more defensive play from Jaedong. But this is also a map where getting that third base is kind of known for being easier.
Yeah, I'm loving that right now. A lot of people, when you ask the Zergs, what do you think of the ZVZ match? A lot of them are saying things like it's a lot more coin flippy, and I feel like that's in part because we're in this state of flux. Like, we're coming off of several, all of Heart of the Swarm being Mutalisk, Ling, Baneling. That was simply what you did. Right now, as we could see with Jaedong, you still do see Mutalisks, but they're used a little bit different. You're not going to see those like 35 Mutalisks we used to see in earlier Heart of the Swarm. Now it's like map control-esque 12 and less, and then you switch into either a roach timing or infestors, or even a double melee is sometimes used into Ultralis. But you know what? Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Nathanius, tell us who's playing, please.
Yes, sir. Spawning in the top left position of the map that is Akalon Wastes as our red Zerg player from Team Evil Geniuses. He's down 1 game. It is Stephano. And his opponent, currently up 1-0 in this best of 3. Spawning in the bottom right position as the blue Zerg, also from Team Evil Geniuses, it is Jaedong. Or as Apollo likes to call him, the Dong.
The Dong. Yes. Jaedong has actually, in very short time, made a name for himself at these DreamHack tournaments. DreamHack Open Stockholm. He actually went up into the top 4 there with a great series against the eventual runner-up, Naniwa. Not before he did defeat Gumiho, though, as he did repeat last night. So, Jaedong getting it done abroad, which is really cool to see. His first ever appearance was actually at a Kingston-sponsored event at, I want to call it, I think it was CES Las Vegas. I was there. I actually commentated, so I should probably have a better memory for this. But kind of cool. Kingston, one of the sponsors here, also sponsoring other things as well. They're one of the staunch supporters of esports. But getting inside this game just a little bit more, so like Nathanius and I talked about, it is Akalon Waste, and Nathanius talked about how the third base is notoriously easier to take. So last game we saw Belshir Vestige. I think if you're a real fan of 3-base Zerg, you cried a little bit because I saw something like 5 3-base attempts get killed on either side. They're like, no, not again. Kept dying. But on this map, it's certainly possible, but less likely that that'll be the case. It'll be more likely that both players are like, all right, you're probably going to hold your third. It's pretty easy to hold your third. I'm going to try. I'm going to poke and prod at your defenses. But this could go the distance. We could see a lot more Swarm Hosts. We could see a lot more late-game tech, or just Roach Hydra Bloodfest.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the reasons why it's easier on this map is you don't have that big double high ground ramp area by the third base between the natural. You go in front of your natural in this map, and you're already kind of covering the entrance to your third base, which makes the run-bys as well a little bit more difficult. We didn't really see too much of that, though, in the first game. It was more straight-up engagements. And it's, like you said, I feel this map is going to be a little bit more conducive to a longer game.
Sure. I have to agree with you. And so far on either side, in terms of production tab, we can see that they're doing very, very similar things. I think Stephano is, well, he's a little bit later to his speed, but honestly, that's a window of a good 10 seconds. So if something happens inside that 10 seconds, poor Stephano, that's just bad luck. But otherwise, very similar. 21 drones for Jaedong, 19 for Stephano. That'll, as you said, seesaw back and forth. And in terms of projection for the game, I think Nathaniel and I have laid it out there. I mean, this map is really good for 3 base. So you're going to see a lot more defensive play, a lot more perhaps mid to late game tech. But I really actually enjoy the early game stages of ZVZ because I feel like it's setting the board for what's going to happen later. We can see these scouting lings from Jaedong coming in. They are destined to die, but varying degrees of die. They want to scout out what's happening. They want to see, is there no drones coming down? Is there 20 lings at the top of that ramp? Do you already have speed because you did something very strange? Of course, Jaedong sees a much more standard opening from Stephano, but there is that Baneling nest going down.
Yeah, and I think this is interesting to see. We do have Jaedong going for quite a few speedlings. He has, however, not gotten that Baneling nest. Stephano going for the Baneling nest as soon as he had 50 gas after speed. A little bit more of a, you could say, standard Korean style out of him. And I feel like this could be what Stephano needs to get an edge. They're starting up as well. I feel it's not going to be matching up quite on point with these Zerglings, but he could end up going for some kind of delayed Roach Bust as he has acquired a second gas in his natural.
Well, this is going to be like a 2-prong all-in, essentially. I mean, that's a lot of speedlings. You can actually see he's down 8 drones because of it, but he's got a lot of lings, but defensive banelings and spine crawler means that Stephano has the tools necessary to defend this. It's all about micro. He's going to move forward. Lings trying to work on those banelings. No detonation just yet. One hanging on the edge of its life. Lings swinging forward. They want to go for the ramp. They're trying to avoid the banelings, both waddling back and forth, looking for that big detonation, and so far, Stephano has repelled the initial stage of this all-in.
Yeah, fantastic. He just barely grabs that last Baneling, but you make a great point. He kept 2 of those Banelings alive. The Zergling count's actually becoming slowly and slowly more even, and you know, Jaedong, he actually cannot engage into this just yet, but the Roaches are on the way now.
And a Baneling nest. This is like a 3-prong all-in.
The first step, he goes in with the quick hook. And he's gonna try to get that haymaker, as you stated, to try to finish him off with the Roaches. And this is a very powerful all-in, especially considering that we don't see anything like a Roach Horn, and Stephano's going for a lair.
Yeah, and that's, from our point of view, that's actually one of the worst things we could possibly see. He's also making an Evolution Chamber. Of course, neither of those things are going to help him. All of a sudden, the Baneling portion of this all-in makes a lot of sense. I mean, these Roaches alone were going to be hard to handle, but with Baneling support, it's going to be tough. We see 3 Spine Crawlers immediately going down. Stephano canceling the Evolution Chamber. It's all about this. Stephano, the Frenchman, is facing elimination. He's down 0-1 in this best of 3. Should he lose here, he will be out of DreamHack, and a lot of people will be very sad about that.
Indeed, and you know, one of the things that's really important here, look at the Spine Crawler placement in Stephano's natural. There's 3 of them next to each other. Those Banelings can blow up 3. If he gets right on top of the center one, he can potentially blow up all 4 super quickly. Not even done yet. The Banelings from Stephano are going to come in, but this is such a tense moment now as the Roaches press into these Spine Crawlers. And great detonations, taking out the majority of them, most of their health, but they're still alive, barely now finishing them up. And this is where the Roaches become so strong as these Spine Crawlers fall.
In a critical error, not only was those 3 Spine Crawlers hit by the Banelings, but also all of the Banelings of Stephano clumped up, and Jaedong is taking advantage of a rare Stephano mistake. Stephano with his own Roaches coming out, Link circling around, so not all hope is lost. He is down 3 drones, so some of the damage in some sense has already been done. With a Ling follow-up behind this coming out from Jaedong, the Roaches of Stephano have a chance to fight back and keep him in this game.
And I feel like you make a good point as far as, you know, Stephano hasn't been completely knocked out yet.
No.
He's lost the majority of his army, but the Zerglings are in the main base, in the natural with these Roaches as well. And he just has more army right now, really digging into what he has because the defense is completely shut down. That's a large investment that he made, especially with the lair. He hasn't had a chance to get any lair tech out. And Stephano taking some pretty significant losses now, down 20 drones to 37. And behind this, Jaedong, he's getting an Evolution Chamber. He's getting a lair. He's getting drones. He's not looking to lose this game or
the multitask of Jaedong is simply too much. He's at both mineral lines, picking off drones with far and away less in terms of units. Stephano is having a tough time keeping that pesky rascal out of his economy. Right now, those Lings will be ran down. Even as I say that, somehow 3 squeeze out. I guess they could end up dying to that Queen, and they do get held off. But like you said, the story here is 40 of those blue drones from Jaedong, to the 17 of Stephano. That is a mortal blow. It's so hard to come back from a drone deficit, and when it's to this degree and you don't have some gigantic X factor like, I don't know, Mutalisk versus a sporeless, layerless Zerg, there's not going to be any return. So Stephano's just kind of gimping around back at base, bleeding out a little bit right now.
And Stephano's going to get the Glial Reconstitution. He's getting that roach speed. He's trying to drone up. But the problem here, Jeff, is by the time he gets his drones anywhere close to how many Jaedong has, Jaedong's will already have paid off so much, he can go for a massive roach follow-up.
Right.
Potentially moving out with his own roach speed that is now starting. He's going to acquire this third base. And I really like that Jaedong's deciding to secure this lead. He's going to make sure that he's going to have everything set in stone for the later phases of this game, even if Stephano does, like you said, somehow hold off his next attack.
You're exactly right. I mean, as the famous casters, Tastosis, have always said, win ahead, get more ahead, and that's exactly what Jaedong's doing. He's taking that third faster. He's getting +1 attack faster. He's got Glial Reconstitution at about the same time, but he's going to have more of those roaches with better upgrades. So, I mean, Stephano, again, he's doing what he has to do. He's getting his own +1 attack because he is going to be on what appears to be Swarm Host / Roach, which is a great composition to get towards. And if he just can't get outpaced that way, he's prioritizing that. But, I mean, if you look at that natural, he's not mining the gas. If you look inside the main, he's just barely mining the gas. Like, He's inching his way forward towards a healthy saturation, but in doing so, the larva of Jaedong is being spent on more units. If you look at that unit tab, it is 9 red roaches versus 21. I did graduate from 2nd grade, so I can tell you that the 21 is greater than the 9. And yeah, I learned that in 2nd grade. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, that American education.
Yeah, it is not
I think
so good.
You just taught me something there. But some people wondering, Stephano's been basically going pure drones so far. And this is, like you said in the last game, when you're in this somewhat behind situation, playing the game out normally is going to leave you at a disadvantage. You have to take a couple of risks, going for this heavy drone composition, and then moving into some playmaking units like the Swarm Host. The only way that you can really get good engagements when you're behind an economy is to just have ridiculously cost-effective units.
You're exactly right, and I think this might be the trigger moment right now. Jaedong sees that a third base is being attempted, and I believe somewhere in the recesses of his brain there should be a "oh no you didn't" line floating around in there somewhere. He's actually not lurching forward just yet. He is adding 10 more roaches though, so I feel like we're moments away from seeing him initiate that engagement. There are Swarm Hosts coming out for Stephano, and yes, I would say Swarm Hosts are significantly better than just more roaches in this situation, but I don't know that they're so much better that they can make up the difference because, again, we're talking about, I'm going to check once more, 9 roaches versus now 37, and that number's growing higher and higher, and I feel like you could almost cut that in half and still have the same effect.
Yeah, and a couple of things to keep in consideration, though, as far as this setup goes. The Swarm Host being able to push that lane, as you so aptly call it, in front of the third base. We saw an interesting ZVZ yesterday, actually, between, I believe it was Cytoplasm and Pig, where we had Cytoplasm with a nice lead, but with enough Swarm Hosts positioned properly, even despite Jaedong's upgrade advantage, if he can get enough of them out there and get a decent engagement, buy himself time to get more and more Swarm Hosts, there is potential for a comeback here, but a Nidus network is on the way. I love this play, Jeff.
You know what? Everything you were saying, I mean, as Jaedong was hesitating, I was becoming more and more on board with what you're saying because, 5 Swarm Hosts, no, that's not enough. But 8, 10, 12, okay. All of a sudden we're talking about a number of Swarm Hosts where if you max out on roaches, you might have made a mistake. But that Nidus network is beautiful play. You can actually see the Overseer swinging around to the top of the main. Yep, that's a spotter. Here comes a gigantic army, though. So if Stephano can hold this off, he's got a whole new problem, but that's a big, big if. Concave from Jaedong is excellent. The roaches of Stephano going down, and that lane of Locusts simply not enough. Drones have abandoned the third, and it looks like it just wasn't enough in enough time.
Yeah, an interesting decision by Stephano to go for the Hive at this timing, especially considering he needs as many units as humanly possible. The third base gets picked off. The Nidus Swarm is about to explode in Stephano's main base. The Dong is going to be all over this main now with more units pouring out. He's pushing into the natural as well. He just has so many units here. I don't see much of a way of Stephano being able to stop this.
No, and the Nidus Network has connected the production lines. Jaedong is moving forward. 188 supply to 84. Stephano, you fought bravely, you fought well, but you, sir, are gone. Good game, and Stephano taps out. Jaedong with a 2-0 victory over his teammate, Evil Genius and Stephano.